Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second day of the AI in Retail and Customer Experience Conference. We welcome all of you. Yesterday, we had wonderful discussions. If you are not here, you missed out. We're looking at personalization. We're looking at customer experience and artificial intelligence. So we started with a presentation from Tommy, JK Software, and they were showcasing their AI solution for retail that helps in achieving dynamic pricing and increasing revenue growth. And Pujit from Velup spoke about their voice AI and chat AI that helps organizations reduce churn. And then we had a presentation from Uritirezi from Infobip, and he spoke about the importance of not only personalizing the shopping experience, but humanizing it. And it was a great presentation. And Pierre spoke about model ops, which helps in actually reducing failures and downtimes. So we had a wonderful presentations, and we closed with a panel discussion where we had experiences from Home Choice. I think Dino, the head of machine learning from Home Choice, shared about their AI and digital transformation journeys, as well as the head of IT from Mr. Price Group, Simon Bradshaw, shared also their journey there. And then they were joined, of course, by Anne, and Anne was facilitating the whole conversation. Tommy, as well as Udirezi, they spoke about, of course, the importance of emphasizing ROI or looking at ROI when we're implementing these AI and digital transformation strategies. So we had a wonderful conversation. But if you missed out, don't worry. The recording will be available after the conference today, including today's session. So, yeah, welcome once again. And today we actually carrying on, with the conversations, and we also have exciting lineup of speakers that are going to take us through this AI digital transformation journeys within the retail industry. And to kickstart, we're going to hear something that is, I would say, very interesting and directed to, I'll say, the retailers or the supermarkets in South Africa, and how they can use, sentiment analysis, to understand maybe the behaviors or the behavior patterns of the consumers. So Elzane Dougall is the BrandsEye account director at and the retail lead at BrandsEye, and she's going to talk about what is driving customer experience for SA's leading supermarket retailers, and analysis of social sentiment data. Elzane, it's a great pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to your presentation.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get straight into it. Just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So good afternoon. As Nzeli mentioned, I am Elzane, and I am the account director for BrandsEye and the retail lead as well. And specifically what we're going to be talking about today is what is driving customer experience for SA supermarkets. This is a quick analysis of social sentiment data and what is driving sentiment for customers. And really, it's more about why AI and people need to work together to better drive data outcomes. So everyone knows that AI is changing the world. There's a lot of areas where AI provides a lot of value. It has come a long way since the 50s. The field of AI wasn't formally founded until 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth College in Hanover, where the term artificial intelligence was coined. So MIT cognitive scientist Marvin Minsky and others who attended that conference were extremely optimistic about AI's future. Within a generation, the problem of creating artificial intelligence will substantially be solved. This was Minsky. He quoted this in a book, AI, the Tremendous Search for Artificial Intelligence. So there is a lot of value in AI already, and we can see that in things like online shopping, robotics in factories and surgeries, smart farming, smartphone assistants, autonomous cars. But achieving that artificial intelligent being wasn't so simple, and there is still a long, long way to go. We've already at a point where machines are able to execute tasks we once thought only humans could do. For example, for a computer to interpret human speech would have been considered science fiction 20 years ago. But today, it's a reality. Voice technology is now present in our daily routine. So by solely using our voice, we can send commands to our mobile phone or control devices in a smart home. Today, phones have applications such as Alexa, Siri, Bixby, amongst others that make it easy to add activities to a calendar or search for a contact by voice. All of these applications use natural language processing and machine learning. But again, our NLP is a powerful tool, but there's still a number of limitations and problems that still persist, such as things as irony and sarcasm, ambiguity, errors in text or speech, low resource languages, domain-specific languages as well. So even Google's NLP hasn't got it right yet. If one of the world's most advanced tech companies can't get sentiment right, then we're still a very long way off from companies being able to accurately measure sentiment data on a consistent basis. So to test the difference between pure AI and crowd-powered sentiment accuracy, which is what BrandsEye uses, one can use one of the world's leading tech companies. So in this instance, in this example that we're looking at, we use Google and its free NLP to see how they would classify sentiment data. As you can see in the example above, in this very sarcastic mention, where the actual person mentions, "Thanks so much, retailer X. Just waited in line for 1 hour in your Stanton store to buy 10 items. Great to know you put your customers first. Definitely considering my options now." It misses a number of topics that are implied and sees the post as overwhelmingly positive when the customer is clearly very irate. So if a company like Google struggles with this, your standard commercial available AI sentiment analytics tools are still some way off. But again, there are a lot of benefits to artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence plays a critical role in BrandsEye's ability to process data at a scale. So we rely heavily on AI to help us identify an author's country, label some of the demographic information, route data when it's verified for sentiment, route data when it's verified for segments, alert our customers to emerging risk themes, and automatically clean data. So we also use AI to remove mentions that match search keywords but are irrelevant to that actual brand or that topic that is being spoken about. However, as we've shown, machines still fall short when it comes to understanding the nuances of human conversation. So natural language processing algorithms used in sentiment analysis often produce accurate results lower than 50%. This is why BrandsEye employs human-augmented by machine learning algorithms for processing social media data. The proprietary mix of AI and crowdsourcing through the BrandsEye crowd enables industry-leading levels of accuracy in determining relevance, sentiment, topics, and themes. This added level of accuracy unlocks the real commercial value of unsolicited feedback that customers are providing firms on social media on a daily basis. So just to kind of take you through that process, and also those people who obviously maybe have never heard of BrandsEye and exactly what we do as a data analytics company, we process social media data for clients, and then we show that through them of what is driving customer experience and what is driving risk for a business. So for instance, if we were going to classify and tag a particular mention like this one, where this person said, I visited the Ventersburg Spa today and had the most rude and unfriendly service from the teller at the kiosk pay point. I requested the teller, whose name I don't know, to help me with a money transfer transaction. This sort of mention would come through to our crowd. Firstly, of using the artificial intelligence to see whether it was relevant from a keyword matching perspective, and then it would go through to our crowd to process. So the first step in what we do with that is we determine the sentiment of that actual mention. So was it positive, neutral, or negative towards the brand? In this instance, obviously, this is a negative post towards the actual retailer. We then look at things like identifying potential risks within that conversation. So when that consumer is reaching out to the retailer, are any of the below applicable from a risk perspective? So things like accusation of unethical behavior, environmental impact, discrimination. If any of those topics are relevant to that, our crowd will actually tag it. In this instance, none of those topics are relevant, so we will not tag it in that way. We also look at the customer journey stage, bearing in mind a journey stage in retail is very different from what we would do in terms of like an insurance or a banking, where you can actually determine whether it's an actual customer or customer wanting to sign up. The journey stage is a bit different in retail, and we're actually working now to look at that and identify it more as topics where people are talking about online versus in-store, the staff conduct, things like that. If we can determine the journey stage, we will also measure that for them, and the crowd will assign a tag to that. The next stage of this will be determining channels. So we can look at this and understand what channels is the actual consumer speaking about. In this instance, they are speaking about in-store. They were in a store at the time, and they were not helped by one of the kiosk tellers. And then we can also tag it for different topics. So this is where we start understanding what is driving sentiment for consumers and what are they complaining about when they complain to that brand. So what are the topics being discussed relative to SPA? In this instance, there were more than one topic related to it, and that was from staff conduct to customer service as well. So now we're going to dive into the analysis of sentiment towards SA supermarkets and how retailers can really use this information to their benefit to understand what is driving sentiment for their customers. What we did is we collected over 900,000 social media mentions for supermarket retailers, and we verified almost 250,000 of those. Bearing in mind the reason and the difference is A, relevancy, and B, we also don't verify enterprise data, which means we don't verify posts that were sent out directly from the brand, because this doesn't really drive customer experience or understanding of that. So we verify those posts that were actually from consumers talking about a brand. And as you can see here, Woolworths had majority share of voice with 36.4% of it, with SPAR at the least with 10.3%. Delving into this now and looking at the sentiment, the net sentiment that was driven by the brands, Woolworths outweighs all the other major retailers with a net positive sentiment of 11.1%, followed by Pick n Pay and Checkers. SPAR performed the worst out of the retailers at a negative 1.8%. And just for your understanding of how net sentiment is calculated, this is taking the total positive sentiment minus the total negative sentiment. So let's dive into this a little deeper and unpack it. Let's tease out the performance a bit more. So this graph shows the longitudinal view of each retailer's net sentiment spread over the last 10 months. Here we can see some dips and spikes in performance for retailers. I'm just going to call out a couple for the sake of time that really stood out over the period. So over a quarter of positive sentiment towards Woolworths in April was cited because of Dr. Cindy van Zyl. So Woolworths had offered to help raise funds for the health activist and researcher and her family once she was diagnosed with COVID-19. So this speaks to the power of outreach and commitment to community support in terms of boosting perceptions of retailers' reputation. And that drove Woolworths' reputational positive sentiment quite high during this time. Allegations of racial discrimination drove down SPAR's net sentiment performance in July, as consumers claimed that Black customers are not being allowed into several branches in KwaZulu-Natal, including stores in Umhlanga and Pietermaritzburg. This prompted accusations of racial profiling. This also took place amid elevated tension during the riots and the looting in SA. We also see that Pick and Pay sentiment dropped significantly in August. This was a result of its ASAP delivery service not meeting customers' expectations. And over 10% of that conversation in August centered on complaints that items were missing from orders, while refunds on the missing items were also not very forthcoming. This also speaks to increased consumer attention on digital experiences and then as well as on the door-to-door economy that is growing exponentially at the moment due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So now we're going to look a little bit at what drove praise for the industry. So these are the top positive topics drivers in the industry for the retailers. And as you can see, house brands had majority of the share of voice at 23.4%. Affordability was somewhere in the middle, and your cosmetics, beauty, and fragrance only had a 4.7% of the share of voice in terms of those positive topics. And if we're looking at which retailer triumphed in terms of its house brands, Woolworths led in terms of praise by a large margin. More than half of the consumers praised the brand when citing house brands. So the word cloud that you can see on the slideshow on the right-hand side shows the positive conversation citing house brands, and we can see several products emerge from it. So that was namely chicken, cakes, and wine. Pick and Pay followed in terms of net sentiment, where at least 20% of praise for its house brand cited Pick and Pay clothing. So a lot of consumers went online to claim that the styles of clothing were beautiful and the quality of clothing was very high. Unfortunately, Spar was the only retailer to experience a negative net sentiment towards house brands. There was Spar's Deli and Meat emerged as a key complaint, which consumers claimed that food was of poor quality or even that it was actually off. If we now look at what drove complaints for the industry, so the top negative topics within the industry, affordability was right at the top with 16.1% of the share of voice, with your turnaround time and product quality sort of in the middle. And if you're looking at digital platform navigation, that was the least negative topic that was driving the sentiment within the industry over the period of time. Just remember that we're looking at from January to October 2021. So Spar's affordability was a point of criticism. Approximately a quarter of the retail industry conversation centered on affordability and pricing. We see that this theme emerged as a key complaint. So this really does beg the question of which retailers are winning and losing in this space. If you look at ShopRite, Checkers, and Woolies, they scored above the industry average net sentiment for pricing, with ShopRite emerging top in terms of consumer views on pricing matters. Woolworths came second, with consumers claiming that contrary to general assumptions, Woolworths isn't that expensive and the quality of products provided value for money. We also saw that Checkers' loyalty programs through extra savings boosted consumer views of affordability. Meanwhile, again, we see Spar at the bottom of the pack here. There was also over 30% of conversations cited affordability as a theme, which is much higher than the industry average. Spar was also implicated in conversation and complaints about the price of ginger. This came amid news that the retailer was being probed for excessive pricing on the actual product. Again, we also saw increasing negativity when comparisons of Spar to Woolworths throughout 2021. Many consumers claimed that essential items at Spar were priced actually much higher than the other retailers. And if we're looking at online and app conversation, online is definitely growing. And the challenge here is how do you win customer loyalty through this channel, and it will continue to grow, especially now in the digital age that we are living at. So BrandsEye is able to thematically segment conversation around online shopping and ordering. Here we're particularly looking at conversations that cited themes that related to this between 2017 and October 2021. There was a 176% increase in conversation about apps and online experiences among supermarket retailers when comparing volumes between that time. But as expected, the highest volume of conversation about this occurred in 2020 when most consumers were compelled to purchase items online for delivery. While we do see before 2020 there was a gradual increase in the volume of conversation about online delivery options, it is evident that COVID-19 has expedited consumer interest and innovation from retailers within this space. We can see it now with numerous delivery apps coming up from the likes of Spar, from the like of Shoprite, Checkers, Woolworths as well. We also expect this volume in 2021, obviously, to increase, especially now with Black Friday around the corner, as well as the festive season coming up, and the demand from customers for the retailers to step up from a digital perspective and from an online delivery perspective. So just to end off and just to kind of set the tone on where retail is at the moment, this is an industry sentiment benchmark for looking at all the different industries, where you can see retail is sort of in the middle of the pack here with a 3.1% positive net sentiment, which is really good. Insurance, it tops it at 5.6%, and the telecos coming in at minus 21.3%. They really did take a dive this year in terms of customer experience and that net sentiment. And just to end off, AI and data analytics is becoming increasingly more important, especially within the retail industry, and it really can drastically improve retailer customer experience. By identifying and understanding what drives sentiments towards brands, and also how to leverage those positive drivers to increase brand loyalty is going to become vital in the years to come as AI takes over, as that digital channels are the way that consumers are moving towards in order to meet with the brands or speak to the brands and sort of drive that brand loyalty. That's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elzane. That was very insightful.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if the retail organizations have that kind of insight, and I find your presentation quite valuable, so detailed, and thank you so much. I will take questions if there are any questions. Let me just check very quickly. Please feel free to use the Q&A icon on your right of the screen, I think, and Elzane will be in a position to answer the questions. I see that people are just trickling in now because of load sharing. I think is kind of like slow as they are getting in, but I don't see any question, Elzane, at this stage. So we'll take a short break. Thank you so much, Elzane. Appreciate the presentation. We'll take a short break, 1 minute. Please don't go away. We have got very exciting presentations coming up. See you in a bit.